Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, we're previewing the Phillies matchup with the Marlins down in South Beach. What do the Phils need to do to dominate their division rivals? Well, shouldn't be too hard if you believe the Marlins are as bad as their record says they are. Plus, we got a big stretch upcoming for the Phillies with their matchups and their divisional opponents. And we'll wrap up today, just because we had an off day yesterday, with a wild Trea Turner related, but not Trea Turner related story. I know. Stay tuned for this one on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm Connor Thomas, your host. Thank you so much for checking us out. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today we have a series to preview between the Phillies and the Miami Marlins. It's a big one. And here's why, right? I talked about, if you want to get my earliest thoughts on this matchup and why it's so important, you can listen to my crossover episode with Mark Farzetta of our Locked On Philadelphia Sports Postcast. He checked in on yesterday's episode, and we talked a little bit about this upcoming series with the Marlins and how the division works and everything like that. But basically, to give you the Cliff Notes version of that now, because the Marlins are so bad, and because the Mets and the Nationals are in a position where they're not as bad as you might have expected them to be, well, there's only one team that should be like lock up every series against them, guaranteed type of team, if you're a good team. And that's the Miami Marlins. I have to imagine the Braves are going to handle their business against Miami. And in order to make sure you're still in the conversation, right? And the Phillies are very much in the conversation right now, currently, and it's too early for standings. But if you look at the divisions, the Phillies have a 2-game lead in the NL East. It's May 10th, so very early. But my point is, if the Braves are going to take business against the Marlins, and you have to assume that they will, you're going to have to take care of business against the Marlins. They're a very beatable team. Right now, the Marlins are 16 and a half games back of the Philadelphia Phillies. They're 10-29. They're one of the worst teams in baseball. What have the Phillies done against this level of competition? Well, they played the Rockies. They swept them. They played the White Sox. They swept them. Like, they also swept the Padres. They swept the Giants. Like, this team is sweep capable. So I may break my own rule of believing in a sweep or kind of expecting a sweep. We'll talk about that. But the first thing that I want to look at with the series is the pitching matchups, because you have two of the best pitchers in baseball going for the Philadelphia Phillies in this series. Ranger Suarez goes tonight. It's a first pitch of 7:10 down in Miami. Weather not a factor because of their stadium, but I'm sure it's nice down there in Miami. I haven't even checked it. It's raining here in Philly. He'll face off against Trevor Rogers. Now, Trevor Rogers has not been good this year. He's 0-5 with a 6.15 ERA. Ranger Suarez, I don't even need to read you his numbers. The Phillies have not lost one of his starts. He's dominant. He's one of the best pitchers on the planet. Major advantage, Phillies. They're majorly favored in this game. So, huge pitching advantage in game one. It's interesting just because Ranger Suarez is much must-watch television at this point. You got to tune in. Now, game two, Taijuan Walker is on the mound. Undecided who the starter will be for Miami. Just a day before that matchup. It'll be 4:10 p.m. on Saturday. So a little bit of an afternoon Saturday game. You don't have to stay up too late to worry about it. But here's why that start is really interesting and why all these pitching matchups are. Taijuan Walker is kind of the reason that Spencer Turnbull got moved to the bullpen, right? You could have moved Sanchez. You chose to move Turnbull. We've had that debate before in previous episodes. I don't think it was the right move by the Phillies, but I think there is a bit of logic to it. But not only does Sanchez have to continue to pitch well to justify that move, Walker has to pitch like he deserves to be in this rotation. And his number, great. Now he's 2-0. This dude just finds ways to win ball games. But he's got a 6.39 ERA, and that needs to be lowered. Hopefully it will be against the Marlins, who are flat out miserable at the sport of baseball this year. But that's interesting because of what it means to the Phillies' decision-making. And then you've got Zach Wheeler in the final game against Braxton Garrett. And, like, Zach Wheeler's just dominant. He's the best pitcher on the planet if you believe the MLB pitcher power rankings. And the second best might be Ranger Suarez. He's fifth in the MLB pitcher power rankings. So you have one and 5 in the MLB overall, not just National League, no, overall pitcher power rankings, throwing in this series for the Phillies. And then you have the guy in the middle splitting them up in Taijuan Walker. That's going to matter a lot for whether or not the Phillies look smart for moving him back into the rotation because he's healthy and then putting Spencer Turnbull in the pen. Now, I don't think there's any other option for Taijuan Walker. My point is, if you're moving a guy with a sub like 1.7 ERA to the bullpen, you better have a darn good rotation to justify that. And the weakest link so far this year in a couple of starts has been Taijuan Walker, and I think he'll be fine. But let's also look at the numbers as far as who's leading these teams. Bryce Harper is leading the Phillies in homers with 9. Alec Boehm in average with 346 batting, like unbelievable. And Alec Boehm is leading in RBIs with 32. Now, remember, the Marlins moved on from Luis Arias. So you don't have that NL hits leader from last year waiting in the wings to cause trouble in any given game. Brian De La Cruz has been solid this year for them. He's batting .269. He's got 8 home runs. He's got 21 RBIs. All of those are tops on the ball club. He is their leader in all of those 3 major categories. But when you just look at the Marlins' overall team stats, I mean, this is it's laughable. I'm trying to be polite to the Marlins. But the Phillies batting average .257. The Marlins as a team batting .225. They have almost 50 less runs than the Phillies. They have like 30-some less hits. They have 15 less home runs. Their on-base percentage is lower. Their slugging percentage is significantly lower. Now let's move on to the pitching stats. Their ERA is basically 2 full points higher. Their WHIP is 0.3 higher, which doesn't sound like a lot, but still, I mean, it makes a difference when you're allowing another extra base runner every 3 innings or so. They've walked 51 more batters than the Philadelphia Phillies pitchers have this year. They've struck out 31 less batters, and the opponent batting average .258. The Phillies batting average .257, so right on par there. And the opponent batting average for the Phillies .224, and the Marlins .225. So basically, here's what I see from those opposing batting averages and the team batting averages. The Marlins have been getting smoked by everybody. The Phillies pitching has been pitching like every team they face is the Marlins. And the Marlins have been getting smoked by everybody offensively too, while the Phillies batting average is like every team that plays the Marlins. So it's just the Phillies have been doing this against everybody, what some teams are doing to one of the worst teams in baseball. So that's more credit to how good the Philadelphia Phillies have been. There's just not that much on this Marlins team that you really need to be worried about. I mean, you look at some of the statistics for the guys. De La Cruz has been their best player, or best offensive player. Josh Bell has been okay, but he's batting, listen, .201. He's got 4 homers, 13 RBIs. That 200 average isn't going to scare you. Jazz Chisholm's all right. He's batting .236 with a couple of 5 home runs, but the guy who's up there in average for them, .299, Luis Arias, no longer on the team. He's in San Diego. Like Tim Anderson, not the Tim Anderson that broke on the scene with the White Sox. I mean, it's the same guy, but he's just not the same guy. They don't really have anyone to be worried about. Jake Berger's not having a good year. Like Avisel Garcia's not having a good. I'm trying to just find names that you even recognize on this team, and they don't have a lot of names. They're in the middle of a bad tank. They really are. That's why they traded Arias. That's why they traded Birdie, who was going to be their, like, the guy that Edmundo Sosa and Whit Merrifield are for the Phillies. That's who Birdie was for the Marlins. And right before opening day, they're just like, yeah, we're moving him. They're not trying to compete this year. They're trying to tank. They're trying to lose. And I don't know what the strategy is down there in Miami. I don't mind it because they're in the division, so more wins for the Phillies. Totally cool with me. But that's why this is important, right? This is a team that you need to beat. And I'll tell you, there are those rare times, right? I like to save my bullets for when they count. I do not like to say, oh, well, the Phillies are playing hot right now. This team isn't that good. Sweep them. Sweep them. Like, I have not said that at any point this year that I look for a sweep. Even in that week where they played the Rockies and the White Sox in back-to-back series, I said 4-2 would be fine for me. Well, the Phillies go 6-0. So I'm always pretty conservative. This is one of those series where it's divisional. The Phillies are hot, and they have 2 of their best pitchers going. Well, they're 2 best pitchers going. 2 of the best 5 pitchers on planet Earth right now going. Like this is, and the guy who's not one of those guys, Taijuan Walker, is throwing against an unnamed pitcher right now because the Marlins don't know who they're throwing. This needs to be a series win, but I'm expecting a sweep from the Philadelphia Phillies. Please do not make me regret saying that. If they don't, you'll understand why I always try and be conservative because crazy things can happen. But this series just feels like a sweep to me. And I hope that they're able to go down on the road to Miami and get this done. 3 games over the weekend, 3 victories for the Phillies. How nice would that be? But would it be surprising? I mean, I don't think so because we've seen them do it so many times already this year. So those are my expectations for the series against the Marlins. That's not the only thing to look forward to, though. As we head into this weekend with an NL East opponent, we're going to look at a handful of NL East opponents coming up in the Phillies schedule. So we'll discuss that and why it's hugely important, this stretch of the schedule, as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. First, let's talk about our friends over at Stitch Fix, though. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. Honestly, you know what? This jacket thing that I'm wearing right here, this pullover, if you're watching on the YouTube, I got it from Stitch Fix. I've used Stitch Fix years ago, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. You know, the only reason why I eventually stopped using Stitch Fix is because every box they sent me was so tailored to my wardrobe. I got all these new clothes, and I was like, I don't have room in my closet for you guys to keep sending me awesome clothes. They're going to redo your wardrobe perfectly for you. They're great. It helps. They know the seasons. They know your style. They know everything you need to know. All you need to do is give them your size and a general idea of your style and budget preferences, and they'll make the magic happen. And they send 5 just for you pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. What more could you want? Not everyone has style, right? You can't all be making. No, I'm kidding. Not everyone has style. And if you need to have someone figure it out for you, Stitch Fix is the best way to do it. And if you don't love something, right, you just send it back. Shipping, returns, exchanges, always free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/MLB. And you'll even get $20 off your first fix. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. One more time, I'll tell you, stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. All right, let's continue today's episode, and we're going to discuss a little bit. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties there with the switch, but don't worry about it. We're going to talk about the upcoming stretch for the Philadelphia Phillies with a bunch of divisional games on slate for the Phils. They're going to play these 3 games in Miami. We just spent some time reviewing that. But also, following these 3 games in Miami, they're going to come back up to the Northeast on Monday. They're going to start a 4-game series with the Mets. 2 games up at Citi Field, and then you're going to play 2 games at Citizens Bank Park. So 2 away, 2 home against the Mets, 4 total games. I guess 2 separate series. I'm going to have to decide if I look at that as a 4-game series or not. But then you're going to play 3 against the Nationals. So the next 1, 2, 3, 7, 10 games are all against divisional opponents. So far this year, prior to this series against the Marlins, the Phillies have played 6 total games against the NL East. They had a series with the Nationals, and they had a series with so it was 3 against the Nationals. I just want to double check that wasn't a 4-game series. 3 opening day, a series against the Braves, and 3 against the Nationals early on in the season. I think it was like their 3rd series of the year. And now you're going to get more games in a week and a half than you did in the first month and change of the season. And this is where you can start to see like an issue with the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't expect it, right? I don't. But let's live in this world for a second. Let's live in a bad case scenario, worst case scenario. Citizens Bank Park implodes and the team, whatever. But in a bad case scenario, if the Phillies struggle against divisional opponents, you're going to be looking at a situation where they feel vulnerable. I want to get through this season, and it's a tall task, 162 games worth of baseball. But I want to get through this season without the Phillies feeling super vulnerable. I don't think for the Braves to catch the Phillies will have to look vulnerable. The Braves can win this division based on their own ability. They might just outchase the Phillies for the title. But If you start losing to the Mets, start losing to the Nationals, start losing to the Marlins, you're going to become a team that other teams think they can get, right? There's going to be this renewed faith that, oh, okay, the Phillies had a hot stretch, but they're not a great team like that. And I don't believe that narrative, even if they do struggle. I think this team is outstanding. I think they'll continue to be. But divisional games carry a lot of weight in the standings, in your mental sanity, in comparing this team to other teams you're going to be playing against for a lot of the season. So it would make you feel really good the first time you play the Marlins, the first time you play the Mets, the second time you play the Nationals, that you come out of this upcoming 10-game stretch in a really good spot. What's realistic over these next 10 games? Well, I already told you, I'm expecting a sweep of the Marlins. So give them 3 wins right there. We'll talk about those 4 games against the Mets, 2 home, 2 away. The Mets are solid, but nowhere near the Phillies level. I would expect, let's go with the split there just to be conservative, 5 wins, and then the Nationals win that series. Yeah, so I'm expecting if you can go 7-3 over these next 10 games, that'll make you feel really good about the division. Anything more than that, you're feeling great. And anything less than that, we start to talk about, okay, well, next time you play these teams, you really need to start winning every darn series you can against your divisional opponents. And I think the Phillies will win all these series. My point is, this whole, they're beating up on bad teams. Well, this is going to be an opportunity to say, at least after this week, maybe you're not beating the cream of the crop in the Mets, Nationals, and the upcoming games against the Marlins in the series that starts tonight. But you'll be able to at least say, well, yeah, but we're beating teams in our division. We're taking care of the NL East. And that's going to be an additional sign that this team is ready to compete. Taking care of not only the teams you should beat, but taking care of the teams you should beat that are in your division, that are familiar with you. And normally divisional games play a little bit tougher. There's a little bit more opportunity for upset because you know these teams very well and you know their tendencies. And it's not interleague or anything like that where you see this team once a year. So a lot on the line. And also, the Braves have been monsters in NL East play over the past couple seasons. It's been their bread and butter. It's been one of the huge reasons they've taken a stranglehold over this division the past couple years. And if the Phillies want to do that themselves, well, they're going to have to do it by taking advantage of these teams when the Phillies are hot. This is a great time to continue on a run. Can they do it? Or are they kind of hitting that stretch where water's finding its level and they're not going to play, I don't know. They're how many games over 500 right now? The Philadelphia Phillies are. Their total record is 26-12. So 14 games over 500. Best record in baseball, most wins in baseball, tied with the Dodgers now, but percentage-wise, they've got more. Like, if you want to continue to hang your hat on that, you got to beat your divisional opponents, and you've got a chance to prove that this week. So I want the Phillies to continue to ace every test thrown their way. This is just the latest one. Divisional games. How do you handle it? We're going to find out starting with this series with the Marlins. But coming up next, I want to wrap up with this. We had an off day yesterday, so it gives me a little bit more room to jump into some stuff that is not typical conversation here on Locked On Phillies, but this is too wild of a story for me to not bring up to you. It's Trea Turner related, but it's not Trea Turner, and it also involves an elderly lady from the area. Like, this is a nut story. I'll tell you what it is coming up because I'm sure you've been wondering about it since I teased it as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about Policygenius first, though. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Think about it. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. You can talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. You easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Basically, rather than searching through a billion policy companies and trying to figure out which insurance is best for you, Policygenius puts it all in one place. And they give you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb, or you can click the link in the description of this episode to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. I also want to tell you about DoorDash because we've only got a couple of days till Mother's Day. And if you've been listening to this episode or listening to this podcast, I should say, DoorDash has got what you need when it comes to making sure your mom is happy. All right. You want to make your mom smile? Well, start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brand she loves, delivered right to her door the very same day with DoorDash. Moms are a gift, so give her the best this Mother's Day. You can get gifts as thoughtful as she is. Select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech to self-care essentials and more, delivered right to her door. Maybe your mom has a sweet tooth. Get her candy. Maybe she's a tech enthusiast. Get her that new gadget she's been wanting. A beauty connoisseur, makeup, earrings, jewelry, anything like that. Like, they've got everything. So go ahead and get her the thoughtful gift she deserves. You know what's even better? You get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place. And with DoorDash, you get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 plus on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Locked On MLB. Order using DoorDash today. Terms do apply. Let's round out with this because there is a wild Trea Turner story out there. Well, it's somewhat Trea Turner. It's not Trea Turner. All right, let's start with this. But a 70-year-old Philadelphia Phillies fan was apparently had $50,000 stolen from her by someone pretending to be Trea Turner. No, this guy wasn't wearing like a Trea Turner mask or something. What happened was somebody impersonating Trea Turner began messaging her on social media and talking to her, pretending to be Trea and saying, "Oh, thank you for being a fan," stuff like that. She didn't know any better. I'm not making fun of this woman whatsoever. This is a really bad situation, but it is just too wild of one to not bring up. It's major news surrounding the Phillies right now, but she initially had doubts on whether or not it was Turner, but the person sent pictures saying, "Oh, this is Trea," whatever. We've all seen the fake kind of, those spam emails or whatever. Well, if you get one from someone pretending to be Trea Turner, it's not real. And he said he was down on hard times. Now, I will tell you what, I feel bad for this lady, but if Trea Turner or anybody on this Philadelphia Phillies team, the way John Middleton pays his players, says, "Hey, I've hit hard times, I need $50,000, I bet they've got enough money to make it work, okay? They'll ask their buddy Bryce Harper for a loan, or Trea Turner will take care of it himself with his brand new contract from last year. Like, if you get any messages from the Philadelphia Phillies, it's probably not the Philadelphia Phillies. So I do feel bad for this lady, and I hate to see someone swindled out of money, but at the same time, kind of nuts to believe the shortstop of your favorite baseball team is messaging you asking for $50,000. So this is more a PSA than anything. Check in on your loved ones and relatives and make sure they are not messaging any fake Philadelphia Philly. Hopefully the Phillies will be able to go down to Miami and steal a couple wins from the Marlins this weekend, but hopefully no one else gets got by random people pretending to be Phillies and stealing money from the elderly. The Phillies are so good right now, even online scam artists want to beat them. So that's the price that comes with being the best team in baseball, I suppose, is people start to try and pretend to be you and steal your identity. But anyway, just wanted to update you on that. If you talk to your parents or you see something on the news and you're like, what in the world is this about the Phillies? That's the breakdown of the story. So there you have it. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for checking us out. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And that's our last episode for the week, being that it's Friday. So hopefully we'll be talking about a sweep on Monday, or at least a series win, and previewing the next series against the New York Mets. All that on the next episode. That's all for today. Thank you again for checking us out. And I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.